All right, so yeah, it's been a minute since I've uploaded, but we've got some brand new details about the Cyberpunk sequel dubbed Orion, straight from CD Projekt Red. Yes, this is official stuff. We're going to talk about it because it looks like to me the sequel is headed in the right direction. We have some clues and signs as to what features are currently being developed for its open world and that sort of thing. Plus, some stuff is missing in action, and this could actually be viewed as good news. I'll explain that in just a moment. And yes, we've got a brand new interview with one of the leads of the Cyberpunk sequel as well. We'll dive into that. So we're going to go and head on over to the official CD Projekt Red website because they posted a bunch of new stuff with what they're doing with Orion through, yes, you guessed it, their job listings. First of all, starting out with Senior Quest Designer. We're going to scroll down here, of course. The idea here is to create the storyline on a detailed level. And we've got designing quests, communities, and open world events. This is a big highlight here. It's good to note that they're so focused up on, first of all, story elements, because I think that's king. That's why we love Cyberpunk 2077, is because of its narrative-driven single-player experience first and foremost. And that's really what they're focusing up on here. But it does mention, yeah, something interesting here, communities, and of course, open world events. This was something that a lot of people felt like was kind of lackluster with Cyberpunk 2077, that the factions really didn't feel like they were fully fleshed out. And I really hope that they are focusing up on factions that are, of course, integrated into the world itself. You go through the open world, you know you've entered into that faction zone, that faction territory, and you could really feel the friction there. That would be really, really cool. But moreover, I really want to see the factions integrated in a way where they are kind of communicating with each other, either helping each other out or maybe full-blown war with one another, and you can kind of get involved in that. I think that's what a lot of people wanted, considering that there were some cool things they did with The Witcher 3 and some of the factions there. But I really want to see the factions more fleshed out in that manner throughout the open world. And throughout all these job listings right here, I want to note that they are really focused on quality assurance, which I was relieved to see. We know how, of course, 2077 launched, but Phantom Liberty was a different story. More on that in just a moment. Again, we're heading in the right direction here for Cyberpunk as a whole, as a franchise. Yeah, back to this, we have lead engine programmer. And what's really exciting again is that, yeah, we are on, of course, Unreal Engine 5. And I get even more excited about this because I've been playing another little game, I guess you would call it, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And I'm like, I think that maybe CD Projekt Red saw examples like this of what Unreal Engine was doing. And they're like, okay, it's a no-brainer. We're going on Unreal Engine 5. Honestly, I am very hopeful for what CD Projekt will be able to do to be able to basically make an identifiable product on Unreal Engine 5 now after experiencing Rebirth, because I feel like Rebirth feels like a Square Enix game. You know what I mean? And I'm hopeful that they can make Cyberpunk feel like a Red Engine, like 3.0 game. That's what I'm looking for, despite it being on Unreal Engine 5. And it seems like the Unreal tech experts over there at Epic know that this is what companies want. If I would compare Orion to any franchise, if you guys remember Uncharted when it came out, people were like, oh, that's cool, that game's awesome. And then Uncharted 2 came out with such a massive leap. I think we might see that within the Cyberpunk franchise. Of course, I really do want to keep my feelings guarded about this, but after Phantom Liberty, they have really proven themselves. And yes, there is something interesting missing from the job listing. Their focus here is on writing, is the single player experience, developing the open world. And you can see here that they are clearly focused on just that. What's missing? You'll notice there are no online job applications. You don't see any indication that they want to build this out as a live service type experience, which for me would be a huge red flag if that was the direction that they wanted to head in with the Cyberpunk sequel. You don't see anything like indicating that they want to involve microtransactions in Cyberpunk 2077, at least yet, of course. Now, I know a lot of you guys do want an online experience for the next Cyberpunk game, for them to essentially build upon what they already have, where you can play it with friends. I myself, if they really did do online, I want to see a more PvE experience. I've always said for years, for me personally, I think PvE has been untapped, and we've seen major success with games like Helldivers 2. So I'm down for like PvE. PvP is a different story. I think that's just like a whole other monster. But if they can nail down like an amazing, absolutely stunning PvE experience in an open world, I would definitely be for that. But with that being said, I just want a good single player narrative driven experience. If the next Cyberpunk game didn't have online at all, I'm there, man. Like some of my favorite games recently have been single player centric. And, I mentioned Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I am enjoying the hell out of that. I don't have to worry about a shop. I don't have to worry about a battle pass. I could just enjoy the hell out of a polished experience. And I really hope that CDPR is headed in that direction. Now, we got to talk about this headline right here. Phantom Liberty game director says Cyberpunk successor is in the fun phase of development. So yeah, this comes from Gabe Amatangelo, who was the game director for Phantom Liberty. And that's so noteworthy because he is working on Orion, of course. And that gives me a lot of hope because right here, Phantom Liberty, it turned out beautiful. So yeah, I say we get into this right now, shall we? I'm going to paraphrase this article a little bit. I don't want to read it word for word, of course. But this paragraph right here goes on to describe Amatangelo and how he basically got the troops together, rallied the troops together, I guess you would say, from a time of when they were really frustrated and down and out because of 2077's horrible launch. And how do you take your team, who had such a horrible experience in the gaming industry with game development, years and years of work leading up to a tough launch, and then producing something like Phantom Liberty? So if he can do that, imagine what he can do with Orion after this big win. The team has high morale. They have their heads on straight now. They developed a pipeline of development, which clearly now works. They also briefly talk about how they have backup systems on top of backup systems, just in case if things do go wrong. And they kind of anticipate things and then adapt accordingly, which I think is just the smartest way to develop any type of game. Now, goes on to say this right here as well. It says the following: in a perfect world, when you're making a game, it's all ideation and concepts and putting stuff in concept art and then moving to the next stage once you're feeling solid about your ideas and maybe your story outline, and then you start prototyping things. We're in that stage, but it's kind of blurred, like prototyping some things as well as concepting some stuff and working on the story. So yeah, we got some prototypes going on. We've got some exploration, some pipeline set up, some story ideas being thrown at the wall, back and forth, concept art, that sort of phase, the fun phase. So they are very much in the infancy phase of this game. It sounds very, very exciting. Man, how I'd love to be a fly on the wall at CD Projekt Red right now to see them going through this process, some exciting stuff happening. But yeah, it goes on to mention something very, very interesting, and that is the tech beyond like Unreal Engine 5 and consoles. So check it out right here. He goes on to say this: I did ask him if game console tech is where he wants it to be to meet his ambitions for the game, especially given recent online discussions about new generations of Xbox and PlayStation consoles. And sure, Amatangelo wishes tech was further along, but he admits he might always be wishing for that. I wish there were holodecks, you know what I mean. So yeah, we haven't really discussed this too much, but I would expect that this next Cyberpunk game to be around the launch of, the PlayStation 6 and the next Xbox, which graphically speaking, it would be very, very big. That's not to say, of course, to not expect this to release on PS5 and Xbox Series X. I do think that this is going to be in that weird place where you see it release on, PS5 and of course Xbox Series X, and then on top of it, PlayStation 6, Xbox Series X. I don't think they're going to want to leave behind an entire crowd or audience that, are essentially, I suppose you would say, stuck on PS5 and Xbox Series X, because I'm assuming that you're going to see a shortage of PlayStation 6s and the next Xbox, and it's going to be a whole thing. And we're going to see it take some time before you see games become, I suppose you would say, like exclusive to that next generation of consoles. And of course, a big concern is AI in the game development process. AI has become extremely controversial, but there's also some really good things that it can bring to the table. And we have this quote right here. Check it out. It says, "My gut tells me that AI for pipelines, for tools for helping with, let's call it the busy work that no one really likes to do a lot of times, I think there's a lot of promising stuff on that front. It allows developers to have more satisfying jobs overall because they can spend more time on the creative element." So that's my optimistic take with AI and stuff like that. So yeah, maybe the future for open world games is that we'd get more dynamic quests out of this instead of developers spending so much time trying to fix things or develop the technology. They can have AI do that portion, and they can really focus in on what makes a game experience fun and enjoyable and really double down on that. That to me is very exciting. Don't get me wrong, I still have concerns about AI overall taking jobs. That is very much a real thing. But yeah, we're going to look at the positives here with this one. It seems like CD Projekt Red is playing it smart in that regard so far. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that one. But yes, it's time to go over your top comments. Remember, leave a comment down below. I always love checking out your comments. It's been a while. It's been way too long. So let's do this right now. So yeah, this is my previous Cyberpunk video. Check it out on the channel if you missed it. So we have this one from Sigma0283 who says this: "I'd like to see more cyberware options that can change the character's appearance, like cybernetic arms or legs that look more mechanical than like a natural limb or Sandivesan system in place where the spine usually is, and have a transmog customization system for the cyberware similar to the wardrobe transmog." That would be really cool. For example, you get a new set of cybernetic eyes, and with the transmog customization, maybe through the Ripper dock, you can have your appearance look like you have one natural eye and one cybernetic eye with color changing options to the eye. Just imagine walking around with an eye resembling the Terminator's red eye. For the limbs, for the transmog, can give you the appearance of having just one cybernetic limb like Johnny Silverhand, or have all four limbs be mechanical. This is the type of stuff that I really, really want to see. Now, because you're talking about so much in-depth character customization, the question is, do you want to see it from third-person perspective? Would you like to see your character pretty much at all times? And do you think that should just extend to like you roaming around the city from third-person perspective? Or do you want it to be where you see your character in like the cinematics, where you actually see them talking and engaging, you see your full customization? Or do you want them to keep it as is and not mess with the current formula with Cyberpunk? That's going to be the big question, because once they start developing these type of features, I think players would really want to see their character, at least a lot of the times. Of course, you do have photo mode, but I'm hoping that they have extensive options here this time around with Orion. I would like to see an option for third person and first person view. Keep it where you can have that classic Cyberpunk approach like we have with Cyberpunk 2077, and then perhaps a dabble of something new, an option for players that want that third person experience. But I really, really want to make sure that they keep what players love alive and well with what they did with 2077. That's like the most important thing to me. That's really tough to develop, of course. Now, we have this one right here. Been playing it since launch. No intention to stop. Hell yes. And then Joseph says someone should tell the guy to hire graphic and overhaul modders, to help with Orion. They'd have it done in no time. I would not be surprised if that's actually the case and is kind of going on right now. Of course, we don't have anything official. I'm just speculating, but they've already done that with The Witcher 3. And yes, I totally agree. Hire modders. I love when they do that and they hire people from the core community. It just is something that has worked in the past. And I love the idea of people that are like major fans of the game and getting a job out of it and getting paid for their time and their work. All right, next up, we have this one right here. Moses says, with the lead writer being from Control and how that game is more of a psychological thriller story-wise, I wonder if Anna will decide to focus on cyber psychosis in the second game. that would be a solid parallel to the first game. While V was running away from death and being taken over by Johnny, the second protagonist could be running away from cyberpsychosis and being taken over by their own brain. I love this idea for many different reasons. It just fits, and they can get so psychological with this in terms of going into like the dark space of the dark web and doing some really cool stuff with that. But also, one of the problems with 2077 is that the story, or at least V, felt like he was on a countdown timer at all times, and it kind of didn't mesh well with him trying to go out and maybe have fun or do side activities. This right here would be cool because it doesn't necessarily have to be all doom and gloom on that countdown timer, which could potentially kind of clash with story elements that perhaps CD Projekt Red might want to explore through side content, like the fun stuff, the more lighthearted stuff that they might want to experiment with. By the way, I got a question for you. Do you want to see them continue these more of a dark type story, or do you want them to lighten it up? I personally think a dark narrative, a dark tone fits the Cyberpunk universe, and I want them to keep it that way. Of course, you do want your humor in there, but you got to be careful. It's a balancing act for sure, but I think they can open up humor and that sort of thing through side activities and side quests. Yeah, but anyway, there it is. The latest happenings around Cyberpunk 2077. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Yeah, it's been a minute since I made a video. So yes, I had double hernia surgery. I'm still recovering from it. I thought recovery was going to be a lot more simpler, but it hasn't been anything. But yeah, it's so good to be back posting videos, and I hope to cover Dragon's Dogma 2 when that releases. Man, that one's looking really, really good. But yeah, very excited for Orion based on the improvement that we saw, the massive improvement that we saw from 2077 to, of course, the updates. But ultimately, Phantom Liberty told me everything I need to know as to what shape CD Projekt Red is actually in. And they're in really, really good shape to absolutely dominate in about, I would say, like 5 years when Orion does actually release. And then, of course, you got to remember, we got the next Witcher game coming up here as well. Whole saga, whole trilogy, which they're working on right now. So yeah, some really cool stuff baking in the oven over at CDPR. I'll keep you guys in the know as to what happens with it. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned here for more Cyberpunk, Witcher, and of course, open world gaming goodness. And I will see you all next time. Take care.